It's the Tribune podcast, week number 40 of the year, and we're here in Mulford looking out the window at a very wintry landscape. There's winter has come in earnest, hasn't it?
It has. It's just got colder now in the last few days. It's
Yeah.
noticeable, more noticeable.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of flooding out in Glen Swilly again,
Yeah,
which is quite astonishing given the fact that the council spent a small fortune alleviating the problem not very long ago.
well, Councillor Donald Mandy Kelly estimates that it could be anywhere in the region of 100,000 that has been spent, and it hasn't resolved the problem, and now he's called an emergency meeting for tomorrow afternoon, and he's seeking to have a much more permanent job done on it.
So there's going to be two pipes now instead of one.
That's
That's a whole new policy in the council. The later pipe originally apparently that he says was probably too small.
too small, so
Who was responsible for that?
well, we don't know that.
Was there an assessment, flood assessment on it, or flow assessment, or what?
Whatever kind of assessment done on it, right, it hasn't, or whatever was done, it hasn't worked, so...
Seems like a whole new dimension out like I would know that area quite well over the years.
It's just past Glen Swilly National
Yeah.
School. Where this
Busy
issue-
road, like.
It's a main thoroughfare between Letterkenny and Glanties.
Do you think the council made a big mistake here? Does Donald Mandy think they made a huge mistake?
Well, he's saying that the temporary work hasn't resolved the problem, it's just left it back at square one.
So they'll undo the temporary work now and put in a 6-inch.
Well, that's what he's hoping. He's hoping for a positive outcome at tomorrow's meeting. And he said the job that would need to be done will cost around €120,000. So in total, you're talking over 200,000 between if that gets the green light. But he's been told so far that money of that scale is not there to do it.
So if it was done right, the first place it would only cost 20,000.
Yeah.
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 So anyway,
What does that say about the council?
well, it certainly there's a lot of money.
It raises a lot of questions
A
here.
lot of money that has, that probably could have been spent better anyway.
Anyway, we are going to be looking at a few different things, but immediately we're going to be looking at the budget bonanza of 11 billion. Has it benefited all of you? A pile.
Haven't seen it, so just not immediately anyway. No.
Now, but do you see that you're going to be €100 a week better off, or anything like that, or €50 a week, or 50 cents a week?
Well, in the current climate, it's hard to see a big improvement.
Hard to feel it in the pocket, isn't it?
It's unimaginable, that 11 billion has been given away. Nobody's happy about it. GPs are not happy because this was landed on them. There's going to be 420,000 extra people brought into the GP service. There's no GPs there as they are, so I don't know what they're going to do about that there. They can't invent GPs. GPs in this country are very, very scarce. And we're in a year now where a lot of very long-serving GPs are on the verge of retiring. And I don't think that we're not either training enough doctors, or by the time they get to be a GP, they've learned enough to get the fuck out of the country and go to New Zealand, Australia, Chicago, or forever.
Yeah, and they're not coming back.
Making good living, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a huge extra additional pressure. That's not sustainable. It's not going to work.
I don't know what's going on in this country, but with a budget of that kind, we've never had so much money to give away, and there was never less people satisfied over the head of it.
Yeah.
The bit that I can't get my head around is that everybody in the country, everybody that has an ESB meter, probably if you have 2 ESB meters, you get 1,200 of a handout. I can't understand why that couldn't be targeted.
Yeah.
Realistically, anybody over 60,000 hardly needs
A bailout for the
a bailout.
yeah.
They really don't.
No.
I would say 60,000 optimistically because they were sort of shouting at the podcast saying "fuck that" for a crack. But realistically, they haven't done enough for the pensioners. They haven't done enough for the social welfare people.
No.
And there was plenty of time to do targeted.
Well, like they had the experience last February. When Michael O'Leary and the Taoiseach and the President and everybody else who's paying electricity were all given the same amount, and it was seen then that it was a wrong thing to do. It should have been targeted. But in another way it was targeted. It was targeted to stop Sinn Féin and their gallop in the opinion polls. Like, in other words, if those above 60,000 were cut out of it, who might be still voting for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, they would make damn certain that they wouldn't vote for them again. But it's an awful price to pay. It's a total budget of 1.3 billion. Electricity charges in the main have gone up substantially this month, and by the time Christmas comes, most of those benefits, either in business or business supports, or in all other kinds of supports from this budget, will have been wiped out. So you kind of wonder, does the government know what they're doing, or what is the crack here?
Is that a populist thing, John? Do you think the way they just give that
Oh,
blanket on
totally.
there?
Oh, it's totally populist.
It has to be, doesn't it?
Well, like, they see the opinion polls running, you know,
Aye.
Fine Gael just on the cusp of having twice the public support. You know, they're on 37%,
Aye.
and Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil combined are 1 percentage point behind them. That now is in the Sunday Independent's own business or opinion poll last weekend. The Red Sea poll is to come now in the next couple of weeks, and that is likely to be more marked against the government. But anyway, Pascal Donoghue has ruled himself out of this Eurozone bailout post. I didn't know such a post existed, but apparently he was being mentioned for it. Now he has ruled himself out, and apparently he's doing a pile of work to get the right man. Obviously he doesn't see himself as the right man. So I wonder, is he leaving politics, or is he just going to become a sidekick for Oliver Callan or whatever? that could happen.
He's on a recruitment campaign for
We're going to look at stories, I suppose, and we're going to start with much regretted death of a great character, a great community man, a great friend of ours, Jim Lynch in Tirconaill, 75 years of age, sudden death last Friday.
Yeah, he made a huge contribution to Letterkenny
Yeah.
through politics, and even when he retired from politics in more recent years, continued to be very passionate about the town all his life, and of course the Lynch
Community was a big thing.
family, well known in the local community, and politics, I suppose, was in the family, John, before Jim became a councillor in 1985.
Oh, long before that. Like I would remember Jim Lynch during the folk festival years. He was very much involved in that. Every community initiative that you can literally think of, he was involved in that, and the family were involved in it. A very good public representative. Probably the family would have initially been Fianna Fáil, then became independent Fianna Fáil, and Jim served for 29 years on the town council in various spheres. The Letterkenny Annual was one of his very big interests. The history and the legacy and the heritage of Letterkenny.
Groups and all that sort of stuff. He was involved nearly in every community or voluntary organisation. Tidy Towns, another one.
But he was one of the most approachable men that you would ever meet, regardless of where you were, or no matter what rush you might be in. If you had something to talk to him, if you wanted to talk to him about something, he had time. He made time.
It's funny you say that, because I just heard a little clip of Father Kevin Gillespie's homily, and that's what he was saying. For such a busy man, he never seemed to be in a hurry.
He got so much done.
And but listen, it was a very sudden calling last Friday for a man that really, as I say, was passionate about the town and done so much during his life for the town.
He made a massive contribution, and like the whole Lynch family. You know, he was a teacher by profession. He worked in various schools.
Yeah.
He initially worked down about Newton Cunningham. As an understudy to the Cancoy, or the last Cancoy. It was Liam Cunningham at the time. And then he went on to Ballindrate.
Ballindrate, he was principal in Clough.
Clough, yeah. I remember being up in that school doing pictures for him way back many moons ago. And the work that he did behind the scenes, the lobbying that he did behind the scenes, he was an excellent contributor to town council meetings. He was never, and it's a very rare thing, as a politician, he was never political in his thinking or in trying to pull stunts. I'm not accusing the other politicians of pulling stunts, and just telling them that they were. They never stopped it. But Jim Lynch remained very calm and very cool, and he brought that air of he had a great self-respect. He had a great belief in his own ability, and he didn't have good times. He didn't face good times within the Urban Council. He found it very difficult over all those years. There's no point in reneging on that. He couldn't become the chair. They wouldn't allow him. But he broke away then from independent Fianna Fáil. He became the chair in later life, and he served the people of Letterkenny, indeed the people of the entire district
Yeah.
He served them admirably down the years.
And in more recent years, the Cathedral Quarter became a huge interest of his in developing that. And well, along with lots of other interests as well, but that was one in particular, and he was one of the most familiar faces around the town. If you were around the town at all, Jim Lynch, you're sure to meet him somewhere.
Yeah.
But you could meet him in Ramelton. Family
true.
contacts in Ramelton.
Very much so.
Be a very familiar figure around the pantomime times and all that as well.
Yeah.
But I would regularly meet Jim Lynch in Ramelton. We'd be over there in the evenings time.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
may his soul rest in peace. We're proud to have been associated with him down the years. Eamon, we're going to do a piece on the editorial this week, which is a bit unique because we've never done this before. And you have the honour and
Just
the
handed a
distinction.
3,000 word article here just 2 minutes ago. But
Yeah,
we'll
but-
give it a good go here.
Just to do the stand first because we don't,
Aye.
we don't
No,
have all day.
We don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so it's the Tribune comment. The Shinners must love the Fianna Fáil Ardèche. Fianna Fáil has consistently denied that the claims of the Celtic Tiger was their fault, as they've continued to blame everyone else but themselves for the disaster. But being in government, it would not have gone without Fianna Fáil's notice that the total stock of mortgage loans in Ireland exploded from 16 billion euros in the first quarter of 2003 to a peak of 106 billion by the third quarter of 2008. Was Ireland running on robotic control, or had the government fallen asleep?
Of course, the answer is they definitely had fallen asleep. I can't believe that Fianna Fáil, this week when all this row is going on about the concrete blocks and all of that kind of thing, Fianna Fáil apparently were distributing some of the stuff, the speeches that they've dug up on Sinn Féin over the last couple of years in relation to the Micah blocks scandal. But I mean, could you imagine that if RTE commissioned a 10 1-hour series of programmes on the fall of the Celtic Tiger and the role played by Fianna Fáil in that fall, and how the country had to be bailed out and we lost our sovereignty financially. You know, you could imagine all those programmes. You'd have Noel Dempsey and you'd have like Dermot Ahern on the night before the EU's bailout. Steadfastly denying the main news at 9 o'clock that the country needed a bailout. I don't think you ever saw them on TV before. So you could imagine all of them programmes finishing with a health warning. Those people suffering from amnesia, contact the Fianna Fáil headquarters. Anyway, we've done a very lengthy editorial on that. There are days for a hoop.
What about Bertie coming back? There was talk about
Trying to get him back in the party fold.
what about that?
Is it time?
I wrote about that last week at length. I didn't think it was the time because I don't think there's ever a time to take somebody back like that. You read through some of the transcripts of the Mahon Tribunal, even Duncan's secretary in it, like his account of how he came to have money. He won it on at the races. There was a dig out at a Man United match, all this kind of stuff. It never added up. And he left. Never actually found guilty of having committed any crime. He was never charged in court as such, because this was a tribunal that went on and on for years and probably cost a fantastic amount of money that the country couldn't afford. But I mean, Fianna Fáil's role in the fall of the Celtic Tiger is pretty obvious to anybody that reads politics or even reads current affairs. But they've been in total denial of that. Even Michael Martin, before and after and ever since, has never accepted that Fianna Fáil drove the country to the very brink of financial ruin. And it was down to not any particular thing, but a lax and a complete mess up insofar as planning and building up the ghost estates and the faulty estates and the faulty sewerage system that we're still paying for, even as far down as this town here. So I would love Sinn Féin to come up with a soap opera that would kind of justify and let a new generation see exactly what the Fianna Fáil party is made of and was made of. Because they keep saying that they have moved on, but moved on from what? But we'll move on to the next story. Where is it? Our next story is about Carrigatman over at College Alley.
Sean McSovna is the new principal at College Alley Secondary School in Letterkenny, and he starts next Monday. a Kerrygart native. He's taken over from Michael O'Gibbon, who was the principal there from the start of the secondary school, which is there just over 20 years. And Sean was previously the principal over in the Carrick secondary school, and so he's coming now to Letterkenny to continue his teaching career as principal. Of course, he's the Sweeney family, well known in Kerrygart through his
He'd
parents.
been totally immersed in the Gaelic language.
Mary Teresa and the late John
He went
Sweeney.
to school at the Gaelic. At the
There's a
Gaelic.
fine school up there too to be taken over.
He went to he went to school in Devlin Ria and then Milford Vocational School before going on then to third level, and quite a bit of experience built up already. Sean, he was a deputy principal over in the Abbey Vocational School and an acting deputy principal
Right,
in
we'll
Maville
move on
Community
from
School.
all of that, and we're going to look at a very big day in Ramelton last Saturday, probably the biggest day that they've ever had in the village, and a unique unveiling of a bronze statue in honour of Professor Bill Campbell, or Cecil Campbell as he's more eloquently known about Ramelton, believe it or not.
Cecil?
Cecil, yeah, that's the C.
Cecil Williams.
Yeah, William Cecil.
Yeah, I've heard William
He was
C, yeah.
never known in Ramelton as William, he was always known as Cecil. And Ian McGarvey
Cecil.
continues to keep reminding people that he never knew a William Campbell, but he did know a Professor Cecil Campbell, who won a Nobel Prize in medicine. But there was an amazing day in Ramelton, one of the most professional presentations that I've been there, apart from an absolute downpour of rain for 10 minutes that soaked us to the soles of our feet.
Big crowd, John.
Big crowd, fantastic atmosphere, 30 strong Strabane brass band. Paul Anderson, the noted Scottish fiddler, composed a very unique original piece in tribute to him, as did Martin McGinley and Seamus Gibson. Lovely speeches, particularly from Joe McHugh, who was absolutely excellent, because Joe McHugh was in there, one of the driving forces as Minister for Education when they first mooted the idea. It was Jean Winston who came up with that idea, and she's pictured on our front page this week. But as a presentation, it could have been fraught with difficulties. First of all, there was a huge outdoor screen beaming the picture in from Andover in Massachusetts, which is 4,600 kilometres away, and it worked faultlessly. The sound, the picture quality, and the whole lot of it.
So you can see and hear everything.
You see a picture of the screen.
Yeah.
Professor Sam McConkey from Trinity was the main speaker there. Dermot Scott was the MC. As John McLaughlin also made a nice contribution and assured Ramelton people that they were close to the council's hearts, which probably didn't surprise anyone given that they stayed away from the town for 50 years. But it was one of those things that was so well managed and so well run. I mean, just a minute before 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock was the scheduled time. The brass band had played for 30 minutes, and Mick Geaver, who's one of the organising committee, just stepped up to the microphone and just gave a resume of the proceedings. And just exactly on 2 o'clock, he introduced the MC, Dermot Scott, and it flowed for 40 minutes in one of the most powerfully presented professional pieces of entertainment. The statue itself is a true work of art by Paul Ferreter, and one of the guests there on that day was his father, Sean Ferreter.
Yeah.
Many other notable people there. You know, people travel from long distances, given that there's a crowd of over 500, and it was like the statue itself will be visited and will be seen and will be an attraction to Ramelton for generations to come. But with that, it's all across the paper this week on 3 pages. Why not buy it and read it, because we need your €2.50 or whatever it's going to be next week. Thanks for listening.